General Electric has long been a trusted name in commercial aviation. From building the most popular turbofan of all time to developing the world's largest and most powerful engines, the company's fingerprints are all over the industry. But despite its strong legacy, it hasn't been immune to the downturn that COVID-19 has induced. With the layoffs and the losses piling up, it begs the question: what happens if GE goes belly up? Let me explain. Real quick, YouTube is telling me that 80% of you guys who are watching this video still haven't subscribed. So go ahead and hit that button and that bell to make sure that you don't miss any of the great content that's coming soon. In order to understand GE's troubles today, we have to make a clear distinction between General Electric and GE Aviation. General Electric as a whole is a multinational conglomerate. It specializes in everything from healthcare to renewables to venture capital, and it's not uncommon to find their logo slapped to the side of products ranging from MRI machines to massive wind turbines. Now, GE has long been the gold standard for American manufacturing, but it's experienced some hardships in recent years. Case in point, in 2008, the company brought in a record $182 billion in revenue. But since then, it's seen consistent declines, bringing in just $95 billion in 2019. Despite this contraction, GE Aviation, one of the company's many subsidiaries, has remained a bright spot. In 2019, it brought in about $33 billion, or about 1/3 of the company's total revenue. That was $13 billion more than its healthcare business, its next largest subsidiary. So it's safe to say that GE's overall success is highly dependent on the success of their aviation arm. And that's a big reason why 2020 was absolutely brutal for the company. With travel coming to a screeching halt, airlines have stopped ordering planes. While GE still drives a decent amount of revenue through service contracts, the lack of new airplanes ordered directly translates to fewer engines sold, and a decrease in cash flow. In response to this whole mess, GE has laid off 13,000 employees, a move designed to save the company about $1 billion. But just how long GE can successfully stem the tide with these kind of tactics is yet to be seen. Commercial aviation isn't supposed to fully recover until the mid-2020s at the earliest, meaning GE could continue to hurt for several more years. All of this begs the question, can GE even survive the pandemic? Well, the odds that GE goes all Lehman Brothers and completely collapses is very small. If the company continues to bleed cash and can't cauterize the wound, then they'll likely file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. While this sounds bad, it would actually give GE a new lease on life. Undergoing Chapter 11 would likely result in GE divesting from all areas but its prized aviation unit. This would allow the company to focus squarely on jet engines moving forward. But, as I've mentioned many times, the aviation industry is notoriously fickle. And in an absolute worst case scenario, it might not fully recover from this downturn until 2030. While a bankruptcy and restructuring is GE's most likely move, it's also possible that filing for bankruptcy would just delay outright insolvency. If GE's board believes this outcome is probable, they might instead look to sell. Now, I want you to pause for a second and just think about who might be interested in buying GE. And I don't know about you, but my gut reaction is that they could be bought up by Boeing. Leave a like if you thought the same. On the surface, this makes a lot of sense. Boeing clearly has a vested interest in keeping GE alive. The two companies are highly aligned, with GE providing turbofans up and down Boeing's commercial lineup. If GE goes extinct, Boeing would be put in a really tough spot, since they'd be forced to completely re-engine existing aircraft like the 737 MAX, the 767, and the 777X. But a big obstacle to this Boeing-GE marriage would come from the courts. Given that the aviation industry is already highly consolidated, the deal would have to go through a lengthy antitrust review. What's more, Airbus might contest the deal. While GE is more closely aligned with Boeing, they do supply the LEAP-1A engine for the A320neo in partnership with Safran. Additionally, they have many active service contracts for their CF6 engine that powers the A330. So, a potential Boeing acquisition, who's a direct Airbus competitor, could result in a conflict of interest. Ultimately, the biggest winner from this sort of deal wouldn't be Boeing or Airbus or GE, it would be the attorneys. Given the complexity and size of the deal, these court battles would rage on for years and cost millions of dollars in legal fees. The only way this acquisition would work for Boeing is if they could buy GE at a rock bottom price. But even if they could, would it even be worth it? All the legal headaches aside, Boeing's never tried its hand at engine manufacturing. As a matter of fact, manufacturing in general has never been its core competency. While it might seem like an odd comparison at first, Boeing's actually quite similar to Apple in this one key way. While Apple excels at engineering groundbreaking electronics, they outsource most of the build process to suppliers like Foxconn. Boeing's method is similar. While they design their components in-house, the build process is outsourced to third parties, with Boeing only becoming re-involved during final assembly. By taking this approach, Boeing doesn't have to worry about maintaining excess facilities or specialized equipment. Rather, they can pay the lowest bidder to do the work for them, which is much more resource efficient. A deal for GE would add a brand new layer of complexity to Boeing's business. And lest we forget that Boeing is struggling too. It's been forced to cut staff and delay programs, and they're still working to reshape their own business after the nightmare that's been the 737 MAX. To add a massive GE deal on top of all of that would be a huge headache at best and a massive boondoggle at worst. So a marriage between Boeing and GE seems highly unlikely. That being said, GE remains a prime candidate for acquisition should their board choose to sell. And if I were a betting man, I'd bet on Raytheon Technologies emerging as the top bidder. Raytheon is one of the largest aerospace and defense companies in the world, and it's uniquely positioned to acquire GE. Their highly diverse portfolio, which includes the likes of avionics, aerostructures, drones, and air defenses, will ensure they emerge strong from the pandemic. And unlike Boeing, they have extensive manufacturing expertise. But most importantly, Raytheon is the parent company of Pratt & Whitney. While most turbofan attention is paid to General Electric and Rolls-Royce, Pratt & Whitney has also been making them for decades. And today, their PW1000 helps to power the likes of the Embraer E2, the A220, and the A320neo. But it's not exactly a secret that Pratt & Whitney has taken a back seat in recent years. Some of this is intentional, as they focused more energy on military-based applications. But it's also partly due to reliability concerns, and this issue's come to a head with their aforementioned PW1000. The engine is incredibly ambitious. It uses a geared turbofan design that's a first for commercial jet engines. But it had a very bumpy entry into service that at one point grounded hundreds of A320s worldwide. Add this on top of the equally shaky entries for the PW4000 and JT9D that powered the Boeing 777 and 747 respectively, and it's no surprise that the jet maker has fallen to third place in the turbofan power rankings. Bringing GE and their expertise into the fold could really help to rectify this issue. Of the three engine makers, GE's are widely considered to be the most reliable. What's more, an acquisition could lead to some groundbreaking innovations. While Pratt & Whitney has focused on developing the geared turbofan, GE has invested heavily in material sciences, specifically focusing on ultralight, ultra-strong ceramic matrix composites. A union between these two companies would allow for their distinct knowledge bases to come together, and potentially spawn a groundbreaking next-generation power plant to rival the Rolls-Royce Ultrafan. The acquisition makes even more sense when you think about the history of cooperation between the two sides. In the late 90s, the tandem joined forces to form the Engine Alliance, a 50-50 joint venture. Together, they worked to design and manufacture the GP7000 engine for the A350, which at its peak powered 60% of the global fleet. Given this partnership, sorting out the complexities of an acquisition could prove to be a tad easier than it otherwise would. The only problem with this potential Raytheon takeover is that their jet engine business has also been hurt by the pandemic. They laid off 15,000 employees in 2020 alone, and that number could continue to grow. But as I just outlined, a potential GE takeover would largely be one for their intellectual property and engineering know-how, which is both invaluable and costs very little to maintain. If Raytheon did purchase GE Aviation, my guess is that they would try to offload almost everything else, primarily their manufacturing assets, in order to limit excess overhead. Now, I know this whole analysis might seem more complicated than normal, and the conclusions that have been drawn are far from certain to actually happen. But if you take away one thing from this video, I want it to be this. General Electric has seen better days, sure, and it's taken many hits that's put its future in jeopardy. But the company has several outs here, and it's highly unlikely that their engines and their legacy are simply going to vanish into thin air. Whether it be via restructuring, an acquisition, or just plain dumb luck, GE engines will surely continue to grace the sky for decades to come. Now, I know that this video only really looked at GE and a little bit at Pratt & Whitney, but I know that a lot of you guys probably have some thoughts and opinions on Rolls-Royce as well. And if you could choose only one of the three to survive the pandemic, which one would you choose? Let me know in the comments down below. Oh, and for those of you who really enjoyed this video, I actually did a similar one on Boeing and its potential bankruptcy, which I'll link somewhere around here and also right below that like button. Thank you so much to my patrons for helping to make this video possible. And as always, if you learned something new today, leave a like and subscribe to keep learning. And till I see you again, don't forget to look up.